Welcome to what will be the last part in this mini series where we've been taking a look at the realistic mode that was released as part of the Metro update. Now, the reason this series is coming to an end is, well, there's two reasons really. The first one is that I think I've done enough into looking into realistic mode. And of course, I've made a couple of mistakes like building this up here. I've just got one more thing to do, which is been bothering me for a little while, is it profitable to run a steel mill importing coal and iron from the border and using a foreign workforce? So that's something I would definitely want to look at in this part. And the second reason is that I'd like to say a big thank you for your responses to the video I made where I said I've got a problem with deciding what to do in the next series. And I've now come to a decision. So what I want to do is wind this series up so that I can start concentrating on the new series going forward. Now, the primary part of this video is I want to test the steel production. And I've done a little bit of calculations. And what I've done is if I come down to metallurgy down here, I've looked at the main steel plant. This is the one here. And to make 43 tons of steel takes 375 tons of coal and 200 tons of iron. Now, what I've done is I've calculated the ratio per ton. I know it's a bit sad, but it's something I wanted to sort out in my head. And what I found is with the this steel mill here, that it takes 8.72 tons of coal and 4.65 tons of iron to make 1 ton of steel. And what I've done is I've gone through and looked at comparable mods to get one that have a very close ratio to that. And quite interestingly, actually, if I go through the mods that I've got here, I was actually looking at where is it, this small steel mill here. You can see this takes 192 tons of coal and 96 tons of iron to produce 14 tons of steel. And that actual ratio is it takes 13.7 tons of coal and 6.8 tons of iron to make 1 ton of coal. And I actually crunched the numbers based on the economy tab here. And what I found is that even with using a free workforce, with the current prices of iron and coal, that steel mill would actually lose money. So then what I did is I went through a couple of other mods, and the mod I found that is closest to the standard steel mill. And the reason I don't want to build a standard steel mill is I'll probably run out of money before it's actually built. And I've actually got it bookmarked here. Is this steel mill here? And what this does, it takes 125 tons of coal and 60 tons of iron to produce 12 tons of steel. That means that it uses 9.33 tons of coal and 5 tons of iron to produce 1 ton of steel, which is pretty close to the standard steel mill. Now, I'm going to put it up here, and before you guys say, oh, you shouldn't be putting it, it's inefficient. This is purely a test. And so what we're going to do is get this in here. The other reason I'm placing it here is one of the few places where it would actually go green to start with. I'm not going to waste time on building a gravel road either, because it's not about efficiency. And what I've done is I've dumped off all the jobs from the construction office, because all I want it to do is just build this. We'll just jump this up here. And if I come in, click on here, you see it's going to take quite a lot of resources to build. Now, to set the parameters for this experiment, if I come into my economy, what I've done is I'm using no foreign manpower. And if I show you here at the moment, of course, we're going to be importing still eventually to build this. But what I want to do is once this is finished, what we're going to do is produce enough steel to get an average. And this is the reason why I want to start at the beginning of the year. And we're also going to use a foreign workforce, because what I want to find out is whether this will be cost effective. So we're just going to let these guys build. And while that's happening, I just want to talk about a couple of things. The first thing, I just want to kind of do a review of the successes and failures of this series. Now, probably the biggest success is actually finding this construction camp mod, which I think is going to be very useful for when you start in realistic mode. Now, as part of the feedback from the video I made asking you guys about what starting location I was going to use and the start date for the new map, I did get a suggestion that this was out of context for a really early start. So I actually agree with that point of view. So when I start the new series, the moment the date is going to be late 1920s, and what I'm going to do is put a limit that I can't use the construction camp until the date of the series reaches 1939. And then what that will then do is show a transition. So in the bit between the late 1920s and 1939s, what we're going to be doing is trying to build a small village community, which will then be the basis of expanding the economy. And probably the best way to explain it is, if any of you watched my Four Corners series, what I'll be doing is looking to recreate that village. From the perspective of a start location, what I've come up with is to actually use both of them. So with the new series, what's going to happen is that we're going to start in one location, probably up in the northwest, because that's the one that has got the most space. And then once that economy is up and running and growing, then the idea will be is that I will then start a new city or town down in the south, the bottom right of the map. And the idea is these will work towards each other over a period of time and eventually join up in the middle. So that's the idea for the new series. Anyway, I shouldn't be talking about that. Finding this mod has been very useful. I think if I was starting in 1960, I would certainly use this mod just for immersion. The biggest failure was, as some of you pointed out, and I knew it was an experiment from the beginning to try and recreate the original start I did for my Divided series. I think trying to go for a large town like this is probably not a good idea when starting in realistic mode on hard. If you started with extra cash, it would probably work, but I don't think this actually fits together. I think you need a smaller community starting on hard. So in some ways you need to cut your cloth according to how much starting money. If you're starting with 10 million, go ahead and build a large town. If you're starting with 1 million, you've got to scale back the size of your operation. And I think another partial failure is I spent far too much money on graveling in these roads. I think I should have been a lot more focused on graveling in the main roads here. And the other thing I would probably say is that I'd probably go for a woodcutting sawmill camp a little bit earlier. I think that would be a bit higher up my priorities, because as far as I can tell, you can't make money with using foreign manpower, so you do need to get some localized industries. Then that probably comes down to this area here, and what I put here is a bit of subsistence farming, and I think this might be an option for an early start. Is that if you can get a population in, maybe even invest a little bit of money with respect to the foreign workers to get down some subsistence fields, to get a good crop in the first year, to actually help offset some of those costs. And I think probably one of the key industry buildings that you do need to get going from the very beginning is actually a farm. Now, I know building farms are quite expensive, so if you were working within the standard game, what you're looking at is building a small farm like this. You certainly don't want to push the boat out too far. I mean, it doesn't take that much in the way of resources, and a small farm like this would probably support quite a lot of fields. The alternative is that you go the mod route. There's lots and lots of mods. I mean, this is if you wanted to go for a really subsistent start, which I might use in the new series, this farm is probably got enough space in it to support a number of small and medium fields. It certainly wouldn't probably support large fields. So you could probably put in a small farmstead here. You can see it's really cheap to build. But there's plenty of modded farms around to actually get things going. How are we doing here with the steel mill? So we're making pretty good progress from that perspective. But it's still going to take quite a long time, actually. Now, another thing that kind of comes to mind is, and I'm going to be a little bit controversial here because I haven't really tested this, is water. Now, I know I've fallen into this trap, and I think a lot of people do, is that you assume that you need to have water purification. the question I'm kind of asking is, say, like, I mean, at the moment, the water purity here is 93%. And that is pretty close, because I think is it 98 or 99%? I think it's 97% actually. As long as you've got water purity of more than 97%, they won't tell you that you've got bad quality water. And what I'm kind of considering is, maybe when I start, I don't worry about water purification. We just get a well up, probably higher than that. I think the highest water purity I've ever got is 96%, but I think if you look, kind of go round enough, is 95, 94. It's going to try and prove me wrong here. Yeah, 95. I think that's the highest that you can get in the way of water purity. I really wish that the devs would kind of put regions in for 96% or something like that. So I'm of the opinion, and feel free to dispute this, that you could probably start a community. So imagine this is a small town, and just give them water with a cleanliness of 94, 95%, as long as you keep the well away from any buildings or any sources of pollution. But however, I will admit that I'm not sure what the consequences of that is. I'm assuming that if they're not getting really clean water, that there might be a higher instance of sickness. So you may need to provide a hospital or a clinic or something to ensure that they're treated. But at the same time, does low water quality reduce happiness or loyalty? I mean, this is something I don't know. If any of you know, feel free to chuck it in the comments. I really want to give it a go, because I think if you can run relatively small communities without purifying water, that gets rid of this the chemical cost. Now, I know that you can purify water using gravel, because if I come in here and show you, it says water treatment. Where is it? What we've got is these mods from Nova, which allow you to use gravel to treat the water. I think it's that wastewater there. That's chemicals. This one actually uses coal. That's interesting. I didn't know I had that one. I assume coal would be more expensive than gravel, but maybe that's an option. I know for a fact that in the early days of water purification that they did use charcoal as a charcoal filters before chemicals came along. It looks like we've got a whole range of coal water cleaning systems here. What else have we got here? This one, the groundwater filtration plant. Maximum amount. Okay. That actually produces 0.1 of gravel. But it doesn't say what the quality of the water is. Let's have a look at this. Sorry. I know I'm going off completely. Groundwater filtration plant. Interesting. We got this one here. This one's chemicals. I've absolutely no idea where this came from. I don't remember. My problem is I go through the workshop every day, sometimes twice a day, and I see mods and I look at them and I think, oh, that's cool, and I subscribe to them automatically. That's the reason why I've got pages and pages of mods, and half the time I subscribe to them and then I kind of forget about what I've done. I actually quite like that. I'm gonna actually add you as a so that I can remember to use you. I think what I might do is actually test this separately, because it's a fairly big building. I mean, I don't know. I suppose it's a bit difficult to see here. You could probably say that this is a 1920s building. Anyway, I quite like the idea of the fact that you're just purifying the water and you're getting them, and all you're consuming is a tiny amount of coal. It says consumption at maximum production, 0.1 tons of coal. So again, it's very much a charcoal filter. That is maybe something I need to think about. And in the new series, if we're building multiple towns and cities, what I might do as a sub project is try out different more forms of water purification, just to try and avoid the chemical issue. Right, how are these guys going? They're going like a train at the moment, actually. I must admit, I thought I wouldn't get this finished before winter, but But then again, they are completely committed. We're going through the money quite quickly, but that's okay. Other things which have come out of this series. This is probably a little bit over the top. I think the idea is correct, but I think if I was going to rebuild this again as a kind of a pickup point to take pressure off the customs office, I would probably use modded cargo stations, something like one of these, so it'd still kind of fit in there, but it'd be a lot cheaper to build, a little bit more small scale. And I think from a warehouse point of view, that I'd probably look for a smaller warehouse. The alcohol and clothes manufacturer, I think I would still be tempted to build this, but maybe with a different factory layout, but not to try and make profit, more to offset the costs of the import for supplying the local community. And it would be a bit more of a long-term project. It wouldn't be something I'd be doing from the get-go. That's yep, that's the way things are. To be honest, this has been a very interesting series to do, and it has taught me a lot about realistic mode, and also it's made me think a little bit more differently about the way I actually build things now. And I think this is one of the impacts of realistic mode, because previously we built small towns and then put in certain services and industries. Now with realistic mode, you've just got to think a little bit more about what you do and do not want. Actually, let's just have a look around here, because the other thing also is we've got a prison here. We've got nobody in prison at the moment. We could probably, because I think that's the secret police doing their things. Here's the police station. I can't remember where the courthouse is. Is that? Here's the hospital. The hospital's doing okay. Here's the courthouse. We've got no crime. Interesting. So let's have a look. I mean, we were getting crime in the last part. The crime has dropped down to 0%. I do wonder, there's 1% here. Let's just have a look at the crime filter. We've got no serious crime, so we're patrolling, but we're still so we've got a little bit of minor crime building up. No medium crime, no serious crime. People can visit the doctor. Lifespan 0. Why have you got? Oh, there's nobody here. Okay, we'll just buy some immigrants in. Just to get that going. What's the happiness like? 64%. Got 8 children up here, can't go to school because that's too far away. That's okay. Car owners. Right, we've still got a kindergarten issue here. Is that because the kindergarten is full? Uneducated workers. Things are okay. Got a fair amount of alcohol addiction. Let's just have a look at that. Yeah. I really knew I shouldn't have built a pub, because the trouble with that is that if we pause here and take a look, we've got 31% alcohol addiction. I mean, the productivity is good, probably because they're geared up from the use of alcohol. Considering the happiness is 65%, we're getting an average productivity of 80%. Lifespan is a little bit shorter. Lifespan is 71%. See, this one here has got 54% alcohol addiction. That's not good. That's something to think about. A pub is great, but at the same time, it can be a little bit out there. Right, I think this is really coming together quickly. What I'm going to need is a distribution office. I think I've got some free ones left. Let me just see. Oh, this would be the last one. Okay, let me just Put you there. Okay, I'm just gonna build a mud road there. Have a look at the mod factory. What are we building? We're building this one. The storage is 15 tons. And the ratio is 2 to 1. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to take chance by arm with this, and we're going to buy a dumper. Just to make sure. Of course, this bug that's still on the customs post here is going. Okay. I like the fact, if you watch this, that they wait until the last guy is out. So I think probably the way to buy vehicles at the border is to kind of buy them. Don't pump out 4 of them, because then you might have a problem with the actual pickup slots. See, the 4th one hasn't appeared. Is it? Oh, is it? It's probably in here actually, isn't it? Because I just bought them on the border. Bought them on the border, yep. Sorry about that mistake on my part. And I think the other thing we're going to need is a bus. Buying the bus, because we're going to need to ship the foreign workers into here. So we got them all fueled up, got them ready to go. All we need is our guys in here to actually finish this off. That's pretty good. Just noticed that I've got both cranes working in here. Got the tap. Mind you, this is the only job that the construction officer's got. So to finish this job, we need 44 tons of concrete. And that's what we need to deliver at the moment. We've got a new vehicle type available. We've got a rail construction thing. Actually, let's just have a quick look at that. I just want to see disassembled. So that one is only available as a built construction. So you'd have to. It's a track builder. Yeah, we've got the EDK 300, but because what you'd need is a connection between the customs shed and the rail construction office. Actually, that's an interesting consideration. If you had this rail construction office and you bought a rail construction train in here, could it get to here? Because that won't back up. It will go out on this path, and then you'd need to build something. Well, there's so many things to think about now in realistic mode that can catch you out, and I think this is where it can be quite important. Actually, just noticed that that's actually a bit short. No, we're not going to bother. We're just going to run here. I think speed efficiency isn't particularly that important. At the moment, I've only got the single concrete guy. This is what's slowing up the process at the moment. But I think by the time I get another truck in, he'll be finished. So what I'm going to do, guys, is I'm just going to cut the video here, and I'll be back once the steel mill is finished. Okay, welcome back. We're just about to finish building the steel mill, as long as the workforce stays here long enough. Otherwise, we'll have to wait for another delivery of coaches. The biggest problem has been getting enough staff out here to actually build this steel mill, because obviously it's a big construction and it required thousands of work. I think we just finished it. So what we're going to do now is just pause. And we've now finished the steel mill. We can need 100, and you can see here we need 112 tons of coal and 60 tons of iron to actually produce 12 tons of steel. Just to show you, if we come to the resources, you can see at the moment we've got absolutely no steel on the map at all, and I'm not going to build anything because I don't want to distort the results. And if we come to imports, we got the last of the steel imports here, which is another cost. But what I want to do now, and you can see we've imported no coal or iron, and of course more importantly we've got no foreign workforce in here. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to set up this customs office, and we're going to import coal and iron, deliver here. Set this to 100%. Keep it busy. And what we'll do is I'm going to get at least some coal, 15 tons of iron and coal in here before we turn loose the foreign workforce, just to try and get a representative figure of how much it's going to cost us. And what we're going to do is create 12 tons of steel. That's the idea. I mean, I know that the fact that we've only got very small storage and we haven't got any external storage, this is going to be a little bit painful, but I think it's going to be necessary. Right. So I think what we can do now is we'll just go here, pick these guys up. Oops. And your job is to come here. And we're going to cut you here. Bring in the workforce. We've got 12 tons of iron, 12 tons of coal. And what you can see now is we are starting to produce steel. Obviously, the problem is going to be is keeping up with the amount of coal delivered in relation to iron. I mean, if I'd had another distribution office, I would have balanced this in from that perspective. So what I'm going to do now is just let the game run, and I'll be back just as we're about to complete 12 tons of steel, because I want to be able to get an average price for everything. Okay, welcome back. What you can see now is that we've imported 62 tons of iron. So what I've done is I've switched off the distribution office. So the iron we've now got in here should be enough to produce 12 tons of steel. But at the moment we've only imported 103 tons of coal, so we need another 9 tons of coal in order to get to that 12 tons. Right, we've now got 111. So what we're going to do is just turn off the customs shed. It looks like we're going to get an extra load delivered whether we like it or not. He can just drop off, so we won't be able to get an exact figure. And of course we need the workforce. We're just going to let the workforce come in. And what we'll do is we'll just let this run. We'll probably... Let me just see... Right, we've now got 12 tons. I think what I'll do is I'll just let it run so that we can get a figure and just use up as much of this as possible. So we got to... So effectively we've now produced 12.72 tons of steel. Now, if you look at this, if you look at the figure, that has cost us, well, if you take off 2 tons, well, we'll just work with round numbers to begin with. Done is it's cost us 1,746 rubles in iron and 2,334 rubles in coal. So if I add those two together, so that's cost us 4,180 rubles to produce 12.72 tons of steel. So if I put that in, sorry, I've got to use a calculator for this. 80 ton divided by 12.72. So what that means is our material costs per ton for this steel mill is 328.616 rubles per ton. If we now look, so if we go back to, so if we go to back to here, actually we look at the current price first. So what's the current price of steel if we were buying it? So if we're buying steel, it would cost us 451 rubles per ton. We were selling this, we'd be able to sell it at 408.24 per ton. So we'd be making a profit of 80 rubles per ton. Well, it's not very much, is it? In fact, it's less than that. It's about 79 rubles per ton on each ton of steel. That's a very tight margin. Now, the real crux is, oops, but that cost us 2,463. So it cost us 2,463 in foreign labor costs. Divide that by 12.72. and that is costing us 193 rubles per ton to manufacture it, because it took 248 work days to manufacture that ton. Although we've got a few workers still here, effectively we would still be losing 80 rubles per ton over purchasing it. But then again, let's just go back to the prices. If we were buying steel, we'd be buying it for another 50. I think even if we were just manufacturing the steel for our own consumption, we'd still be losing money, wouldn't we? Interesting. But if we were using our own workforce, we would definitely have a profit margin there. I think that categorically proves that you can't make a profit from an industry where you're importing both the raw materials and the workforce. Now, of course, if you can offset the costs by using a local workforce, or if you were producing something like alcohol and you were growing your own crops, then that would give you the profit margin. And as a final conclusion of this series, I would say that building a steel mill near the beginning is possible, but you've got to be very careful about whether you're actually making any money. And of course, if you got access to a source of coal or iron, it would make a big difference. The other thing I would say is that if we come into here, there is a tiny steel mill, which has got a ratio of 20 tons of coal to 20 tons of iron. 5 tons of each produce 1 ton of steel, because this produces, a tiny steel mill produces 1.4 tons of steel. So you'd use 5 tons of coal and 5 tons of iron, which is the ratio, which is a lot more efficient than the standard mill. Actually, you'd use less coal but slightly more iron than the standard mill. So using a tiny steel mill would actually increase your profit margin, but you'd only be getting 1.4 tons of steel. I think it's a swings and roundabout situation, isn't it? So really, you need to choose the steel mill, which is in relation to what you actually feel. I mean, another possible solution would be to, if you come to factories. Sorry, I'm digressing a bit, guys, but you can actually, if I can find it, let me just find it and I'll show it to you. What you got here is charcoal kilns. So what you could do is use the charcoal kiln to produce coal, and if you're running on small production, and especially for your own internal consumption, but you could make a profit from that direction as well. Anyway, guys, this is where I'm going to leave it. Hope you enjoyed the video and the series. As I've already said, I will be back with the new series, which will be on the Three River Valley map, which I created, and the start will be late 1920s with some additional game rules which I'll talk about when we actually set that series up. But until next time, whatever you do, enjoy your gaming.